remind me that this is a prop I need to talk about later. Thank you all for coming, and all you Rotarians, and part of why we do this classification scheme. Okay. How's this?
No.
Otherwise, you can use the podium, Roz, if you want. It's a better mic.
Okay. All right.
Technical difficulties.
All right, now we need to have her move too.
This better? Oh, okay. Anyway, I invited all these people because part of my life, which is what I'm going to tell you about in just a very brief summary of my almost 73 years of living, and these people that I've invited are part of that. And as you saw with the Rotary Foundation, those smiles on those people's faces means that somebody cared about them and somebody cared about me. A lot of people cared about me, and so I'm going to give you a brief thing, kind of demonstrating my journey. And it all starts with my soulmate, Ron. And today is the day, the 48th anniversary of the day that I arrived in La Crosse. And it has been an incredible ride for me. And he was my soulmate. He gave me everything. I was a very free spirit, and I needed to be grounded a little bit, and so he helped me. And one of the things he helped me with was the fact that he's a small businessman. He worked very hard at creating jobs and sustaining a business. And I have my brother-in-law here, Keith, as they were co-partners in Franklin, and I think some of you in the room will probably remember that business. But he also gave me not only grounding, but he gave me the wings to fly, and he gave me inspiration. As I said, he did everything for me. And then he was my companion in all of our adventures together. So I Rotary. At his eulogy, I vowed that I would try to give back, and I didn't know what it was, and I feel that Rotary is part of that giving back. And Chuck and Cheryl Hansen were very persuasive in getting me to do this. And so I don't know for sure what and this is part of the discovery part, is I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I know it'll have something to do with community service and working nationally and internationally. You'll see why I say that. And so I was only here a couple weeks, and I immediately went to Mexico and exchanged flags and talked about our book, Brain Game, and so that was a lot of fun. He has a 3-month-old daughter at the time, and he was taking that book home in Spanish and immediately using it to work with his daughter's 3-month-old brain. And part of what I wanted to share with you is what and who I love, and obviously it's the special people, and the people I invited, and many of the other people that are not here, but the people that are here are just a representative of those people that have shared my life and have made me what I am today. And that recovering from the grief, the incredible grief of the loss of my soulmate, I cannot tell you how huge that was. And there are so many people that played a role in that, and you know that for me it has taken the whole world to help me in this process. And it's just like with Rotary Foundation, the things that they do internationally and whatnot, it really touches me greatly. And some of these other things are things that I'm interested in. You'll see a little bit of what I've been doing. But giving back, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I mean, as it said in the title, I've had a wonderful life, but it's just begun at the age of almost 73. So it gives you some idea of how I feel about what I'm trying to do with the rest of my life. So there's my love, and there's some places that we went and we were together. We did a lot of traveling. I love fast and fun cars. My first car was actually I voted the class car. And as you can see, there's some other ones here that look kind of fast. And so far, I've been lucky. I played a lot of sports. We had a championship softball team, and I made this canoe with a friend with red cedar strips and clear fiberglass. And then we built our own racquetball court, and we invited Garrison Keeler. It's kind of hard to see him here, but that's him. We won him in a silent auction for the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra for $35, and we said, well, why don't you come down to our place? And he said, fine. And he said, you must think that I'm the nice guy on radio instead of some guy that would bring 5 gigantic brutes on Harley and stay until Christmas, and this was August. So he came, and we had a great time, but we did not give him any quarter. We beat him every game. And I was competitive at one point in my life, and won 3 trophies, and almost lost my ear in the process. And Ron was afraid that when he saw me that I might look like Van Gogh, because I had 16 stitches in the ear. And then just some of the critters that encountered this fox was sitting on our patio. And we used to have nesting boxes for mergansers and wood ducks. And of course we see this quite a bit, as we all in this area so appreciate the natural beauty we have. And love of fishing. My dad took me fishing when I was 4 years old, and that has continued throughout my whole career. Some of the places, but this one, I like this because we, women from Minnesota, placed 3rd in this tarpon fishing tournament, and this is my first tarpon, an 80-pounder right there. And keelboat sailing, this is one of the things that Ron wanted to do in his life. He wanted to learn to meditate, he wanted to learn to fly fish, and he wanted to learn to sail, and we did all 3. And this is my favorite picture of him, and that's how he enjoyed life. Backpacking, it took me 6 years of married life to get him to go backpacking, because he said that he had slept on the ground with the previous employer, the U.S. Army, and he wasn't interested in backpacking, so it took a little persuading. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is deer. I had them move back and forth so you'd see that there actually was some wildlife in that picture. Love of beautiful places. This world is incredible, and we share in this environment. Love of travel, been to a lot of really neat places. Love of culture everywhere again. We love Broadway musicals and shows and the Metropolitan Opera, and it was great. And local artists, our own Jackie Cartman did this piece up here, and these are all pieces of art from local artists that through fundraising efforts I have been able to accumulate. Let me tell you, there's some pretty neat stuff locally. Love of fun. Now, I have to explain this. I was in Milwaukee for a function, and I don't know how many of you recognize this guy, but he's Bradley Whitford. He played Josh Lyman on The West Wing. And so I went up to him, and I said to him, I just watched you on The West Wing in my spa in the nude. And he said to me, he says, with these big eyes, he said, no one's ever said that to me. And so I had this picture, and it looks like he's trying to get away from that. So you'll appreciate that I do enjoy sense of humor. First speech I gave was on the first Earth Day. Never had given a speech before to anybody, and my diaphragm ramped itself up into my throat, beat red, I could hardly talk, and Ron was sitting there, he said everything is going to be okay, and it has been. So to go from that to me standing up here saying what I'm saying is an incredible journey just in itself. And then, in fact, Bart Frank is here. She's one of the original members of the women who, we were one of the first women in the La Crosse Chamber of Commerce. We were instrumental in getting the rabbit trail from the river to the bluff. And then, this is one reason I am not in politics. Because we went to the city council to get, to allow the use of citywide newspaper recycling, and we were going to use the old Burlington Depot, which is just, it would have been right out our door, right where we are right now. And we were presenting this to the city council. We already had the waste management people, and we had it was going to be handicapped people who were going to be working on rolling the newspapers. So this was what was said to us. It says, you know, opening up that building for those people would be like opening up the library for a stable for horses. Well, I found out that I knew words that I didn't even know I knew. And there was fire coming out of every pore in my body. Obviously we didn't get it, but you know, now we have citywide newspaper recycling. 2 times outstanding woman for the YWCA, and I consider that to be a real honor. And there are a couple people in this room that are also recipients of that. And then I promoted the hospice program, very important in the journey that I had, the 9 months that Ron was sick before he passed away. And Independent Living Resources gave us one of the best caregivers we had, and then Cooley Region Adult Daycare Center also sent us caregivers, and Gunderson Lutheran provided an incredible foundation. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Cooper. She was the attending neurologist and gave me the information that my husband had 9 months to live, or 5 months or less to live, in a way that I could stand it. And that's Dr. Cooper sitting at that table. She gave it to me. He's a veteran. He graduated from West Point. Gave it to me on 11/11/11 at 11 o'clock in the morning. Gives you some idea. And she came out to our house and sat with us and helped us through this process. I owe her a lot. We did. So I have 4 careers, and I've been accused of having way too many retirements already, and obviously I'm not retired. My first career was 28 years as registration officer and technical information specialist for the Upper Midwest Environmental Sciences Center, which was the old fish lab down at Riverside Park. And my boss that was responsible for my career, for knowing something about me that I had no idea that I had in me, and that is Dr. Fred Meyer, city manager. Would you just raise your hand? So he was the one that helped me to do the things that came after. And we're both German, so we worked awfully hard as well. And then 15 years as national coordinator, and I'll talk a little about that. 5 years in county, and I'm a consultant with my own business, and then now I'm in the future co-authoring a wellness book with my holistic nutritionist, and she's here today, Diane Kark, and then working on service projects for local, community, national, and world. Don't know what they are yet, but I'm thinking I'm getting some word about this. Education, University of Minnesota master's, undergrad master's degree, and not Michigan State like a lot of people think, because I actually have a document that I'm assistant professor emeritus from Michigan State University. Never been on campus, never taught a course, didn't graduate from there, but I am professor emeritus because I was there for 15 years and I then qualified. But my position was administered out of that university. Some of the first highlights in my career here, we did a project for the United Nations on worldwide fish toxicant use. Director and co-wrote this humongous mitigation handbook for the Upper Mississippi River. Here's Brad giving an award to 3 of us that worked on it. This is Jeff Mahalski. He's a lawyer in town. He couldn't get the job he wanted, and in the Fish and Wildlife Service, and there's me. Blondes have more fun. The moment I became a blonde, I met Ron. And highlights, I just want to take 1 year. It was an incredible thing. I went to, Dr. Meyer and I went to FDA, and we said that you are asking us to jump through all these hoops to prove that drugs are safe and effective. And yet, we are, at that point, was 70% of all the seafood we ate was, or consumed was imported, and now it's 90%. So it gives you some idea of how important the international aspect is to seafood safety. So it told them that they needed to develop an analytical method for this one bad drug that they were using, chloramphenicol, using it in millions of pounds for use on shrimp, and so that our seafood would be safer. And they actually took them 5 years, and when the guy came to give the presentation on the analytical method, I went up to him and I said, Steve, what was the impetus for what you did? And he said, it's what you said to FDA that made the difference. And they weren't too happy, and Fred can verify that we were telling basically truth to power. And then when I went to this conference in Southeast Asia, this is my first time overseas. Northwest lost my luggage and never found it, so there's a whole new story there. So, but I don't have time to tell that. But I told them that they had to use safer and effective drugs and chemicals, because sooner or later the importing nations would determine the analytical method to detect those residues, and then their products would start getting rejected, which they did about 10 years later. And they also wanted me to do, actually make 2 sets of recommendations. The bankrolling organization behind this huge conference asked me to do that, separate it out for products that were being produced for exporting and those that they were providing for their domestic supply. And what does that mean? That means that they were willing to have drugs that cause cancer and other problems being fed to their people because it was a cheap source of protein. And I refused, because to me, every person has worth. Oh, there's one other story here, and this has to do with this. These are all invited things. In Rome, I had just gone to Korea, and now I was invited to Rome, and I talked to my husband every day, and I didn't realize what kind of phone bill I had. So at the end, Luigi, who was the concierge, I came up to him and I said, I'm flying out of Rome at 4 o'clock in the morning. I need to settle up. And he said, he says, without looking, he said, he says, your room bill, your telephone bill is bigger than your room bill. And I said, I didn't realize that. I said, all I was doing was talking to my husband. He says, next time, he says, you bring your husband, be a lot cheaper. So he went everywhere with me, and my colleagues and became friends to me, and became friends of Ron. And when he passed away, there was over $10,000 that was given in his name to the Salvation Army. Gives you some idea of what impact he had. And Dr. Bill Gainrich was here. Raise your hand. This document shows all of the drugs that are now approved in the U.S. that are safe and effective. And Bill had led that charge. He was in charge of the research, and he and I spent many trips and a lot of agonizing time and effort to try to get these to the finish line, because we don't have a large aquaculture industry in the U.S., and it takes millions of dollars to get drugs approved, and so it takes coordination to make that happen, and a lot of other things to happen. I love this story. I don't have much time to say, except that they accepted my recommendations to close a lock on Fox River so it wouldn't get into Lake Winnebago and the Wolf River system. Why is this important? The only naturally reproducing lake sturgeon in the world is in Lake Winnebago, and the Wolf River system is a premier trout stream system. And then help get these fish toxicants that are used to control the sea lamprey in the Great Lakes and other nuisance species, exotic species like the flying carp. I'm the only person in the whole world that's ever had this job and ever will, because they said, well, we collectively had accomplished enough, so they didn't need to keep the position going. And nowhere else in the world have they got somebody like this. And they used to call me the matchmaker. So this is, I hope this is a kind of role that I can play in Rotary. And as you can see, we accomplished a lot, and this is what this document contains, is all those things that we accomplished during that time. Mom's legislation, I won't go into that, but that helped sponsors, because they couldn't afford the millions of dollars because they never get a return on their investment with the amount of drugs and chemicals they might sell. And again, they're safe and effective. And then I felt that how do we get things done? I'm always looking for a better way, and one of them is through international harmonization, cooperation, and coordination. And so this is a picture of me at a keynote address in Prague in 2009. I was invited to give this address to kind of summarize the whole effort that's been a worldwide effort. And governments of Canada and Australia asked me to speak about these programs we had. And I stood up to EPA, because they were putting out, to me, this, when you think about seafood, and a lot of people, maybe not all of you people because you're discerning people, but there are many people that think that farm-raised fish are not good for you, and because it's got all this bad stuff in it. Well, a lot of this is pseudoscience and false information, and I can tell you that from, anyway, they put out a document, a draft document that put forward all this crap, and I stood up to them and I said, you did us a disfavor by putting that out there, because then the public thinks that that's what the case is, and it wasn't the case at all. And then I worked on a contract to help FDA determine where they would concentrate their efforts to get to check for these residues of concern. So that was a huge project, took 5 years to do. And then another contract, and this was it's an online course for foreign aquaculture producers to know what they should be using to get their products accepted into this country. And this drug, I find that this was 30 years it took us to get this approved, and we all have scars at that table from working on that. And then I've gone to Congress requesting funding for UMass, we have a fish lab up there, for flying carp and those other invasive species. And I had 5 clients in Scotland, Norway, France, Texas, and Georgia. I'm down to 2 because I want to concentrate on what I'm doing now, which includes Rotary. So, summary, basically to promote seafood safety by trying to ensure that safe and effective drugs are being used both here in the US and around the world. And then I've been author of over 80 publications of various kinds, and there's just an example there. So my 4th career, how am I doing? Okay.
I'm just going to stand.
Yes, wellness. I am alive today because I met this holistic nutritionist, Diane Karp, who changed my life, and I want to make sure that we help others with this. Lost over 100 pounds, went from a size 24 to a 10. Metabolic age went from 90 to 20. I was almost gray, and this is my natural color. I have the energy of a 20-year-old, and digestively I can. So physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, I have been transformed in that period of time. And I'm thinking about this. These are all things I've got. This is not a red light district here. This is poultry heat lamps. And I'm thinking about some of the wellness functions will be at my house on Lake Onalaska. And I'm trying to tie that with aquaponics, which is the production of plants and fish and other aquatic organisms. And so I've been doing a number of things, and I'm hoping tomorrow to tour Will Allen's company, Growing Power, in Milwaukee, and trying again tie this all together. So giving back is my motto, and it all stems from Ron. Philanthropy and service, contributing locally to organizations and agencies here and individuals, and then seeking ways, this is really important, seeking ways of working together using Rotary as the basic infrastructure for giving back. So thank you for listening, and I know I'll be working with a lot of you, and I will continue to work with my friends that have helped me get to where I am. Thank you.
And then responding on behalf of the club is Marianne Gershind.
Thank you very much, Roz. Many thoughts are running through my mind. But first of all, I want to say that Tom Thompson, Judy Kirkpatrick, and I are Michigan State alums, so we'll adopt you.
Thank you.
Consider yourself an honorary alum of Michigan State. Then, as you were talking about Ron, I feel badly that many of us in this room never had an opportunity to meet him because it's obvious he had a very powerful influence on your life and how your life is going now as well. And so for that, we're very grateful too. And then I also am well aware now why when I first met you, you had been one of the outstanding women of the blind not only once but twice. So I'd be surprised if it would happen again, doing all of this. And then lastly, I just want to wish you well and thank you for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you're going to continue to do in your service orientation and as you continue your fourth career. And we're very grateful Rotary is part of that. Thank you.
We have a couple of announcements.